Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Ruffman. I am your host, John Ruffman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review, or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. It is the beginning of a new week, and I am in Texas. I actually will be here for the balance of the week, and it has been a fascinating experience. We have visited so far the Lyndon B. Johnson Library and the George H.W. Bush Library, and later this week we will go to the George W. Bush Library. So, on this particular occasion, I am immersing myself in the American presidency. And how interesting to be in this state when the No King Day was celebrated throughout the United States. And yes, even here in Texas, in the heart of a place where Donald Trump is for many a hero, there is no doubt that this was a spectacular success for those who oppose Donald Trump. And let me say a word about the nature of protest. I want to begin by saying I am not a communist. I am not a Marxist. I don't hate Donald Trump. I do love America. And when the Republicans decided to name this particular day of demonstration against Donald Trump Hate America Day, I'm thinking to myself, what are they thinking? Legitimate protest is part of the American tradition. Let me point out, we saw it at the Johnson Library, where we heard the expression, hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Or at the George H.W. Bush Library, where there was tremendous opposition at first to what he did in the Gulf in liberating Kuwait. Demonstrations are part of the American process. But when I heard Republicans, leading Republicans, members of the Republican National Committee, accuse those who protest Donald Trump of being un American, or still worse, the relabeling of the day as a Hate America Day, well, that's something that we ought to all say no. It just isn't right. And when I saw the artificial intelligence video that was put together by the Trump people, which was posted on Truth Social, which showed him soaring over America, and I'm not going to describe what came out of him across America. It was just appalling for a president of the United States of America to conduct himself in such a fashion is to me, well, un American. We value the idea of protest in this country. And one of the most amazing things to me is that the president is speaking about invoking the Insurrection Act. He wants to be able to control what happens in cities across America. When we were in Austin just the other day, the governor of the state of Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, decided he would send in the National Guard. Let me point out, and I do so emphatically, that the protests which took place across America were not insurrectionist protests. There was little or no violence in city after city after city in all 50 states of this union. There was, in fact, constructive protest by millions of people who are frustrated by what they are witnessing in the Trump administration. The response of the Trump administration is a negative response. Any criticism of the president is viewed as un American. And that, my friends, is the most un American thing one can ever imagine. There is a simple reality. This president has decided to invoke certain powers and is threatening to invoke certain powers. Now, you know that normally I'm in San Francisco, California, and you heard the president this weekend speak of invoking the Insurrection Act and saying, San Francisco, you are next. Let me tell you something. This is a misuse of president. In normal time, a president using the kinds of powers that Donald Trump is using and is threatening to use would have resulted immediately in articles of impeachment being submitted to the House of Representatives. But that's not all. Are you listening to what happened in the White House between the President Volodymyr Zelensky, the President of Ukraine? Zelensky came, and what is Donald Trump saying to him? It's over. You are finished. The Russians have to be given what they want. A complete sellout of Ukraine by Donald Trump. Fortunately, at this point, the Ukrainians do not seem to be abandoned by Europe. Europe seems to be standing steady, and more, it appears that what Donald Trump is proposing, a complete surrender by Zelensky and Ukraine to Russia, will be rejected by the Ukrainians. There is no doubt that there is something seriously wrong in this administration. Last week, I spoke favorably of the return of the hostages who were held for 737 days. We spoke about that, and I said at the time, this is not peace in the Middle East. This is the release of the hostages. And for that, Donald Trump deserves great credit, as does Joe Biden, by the way. But there is a simple reality. The so-called peace is hardly a peace. Hamas is violating all the rules, and more than that, is taking Palestinians who they feel were traitors, taking them out and shooting them in the streets. This is not a peace. This was the return of the hostages. And for that, Donald Trump deserves great credit. But, and it's a big but, this is not peace in the Middle East. Far from it. The exercise of presidential power, and yes, Donald Trump's ability to bully people, is fully on display. So whether we look to domestic or foreign policy, well, there's a serious problem with Donald Trump. And let me say a serious problem with the Republican Party. Speaker Johnson refuses to call the House of Representatives to order. And so, in the midst of a government shutdown, the House of Representatives, well, they're not there. And by the way, the members of the House who are not there should not be paid. This is, to me, one of the most upsetting things one can imagine. A government that is not functioning because of the Republican Party. I know the Republicans are trying to blame Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, but quite the contrary. It is the Republicans. It is the Republican Speaker of the House who is refusing to call the House into session. That, my friends, is a very clear statement about who is responsible for this shutdown. I believe that one of the key reasons that Speaker Johnson is not calling the House to session is because of the case. If the House is reconvened, a Democrat will have to be sworn in that will give the Democrats and the opposition to Donald Trump the votes they need to get that bill out onto the floor to deal with the Epstein case. Look, let's be blunt. You can say many things about Donald Trump. Some good, some of them not so good. But this is the most corrupt president in the history of our country. I say that bluntly, emphatically, and without any hesitation. And it applies whether we deal with domestic policy or foreign policy. 3 cheers for the American people who turned out on the streets by the millions to say, we do not want a king. We want a president. And let me just be clear. The president is today ruling by executive order. He is threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. And where is the Supreme Court? That's what we're waiting for, because the Supreme Court has a lot of action which it has to take. And let us hope that the court respects, and maintains the separation of powers. Did you hear Justice Kennedy, retired from the Supreme Court, who's just written a book and is doing a series of interviews, talking about the threat to this country if one branch of government dominates over another? My friends, we'll be talking a lot about this in the future, but I want to be crystal clear that what Donald Trump is doing is a subversion of American democracy. And what the Republicans are doing is playing along with Donald Trump. And this, my friends, is no way to run a country. It is no way to preserve American democracy. We'll talk more about this in the days ahead, without any question. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can interact with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You can email me directly, as many of you do, and I'm happy to receive your comments. And, of course, my deep appreciation to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program, who makes sure we are up and running every single day. I am John Rothman. You are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman, and I will see you tomorrow.